My next logical step is going to be to put these seals in. Then I'll put the differential in, get that sealed up, and then I'll paint it all together. I could just mask this end off, paint the whole thing up, and I'll be ready to put the axles in, put brakes on. So I'm thinking seals are next logical step. Normally I just take a hammer, tap my seals in, and be very careful with it. These are set quite a ways back in there. So I made up a little seal driver to drive that in. I already had this handle made from a long time ago. I think I have a couple different adapters I made. There's just a nut on the end. I could change this end out, whatever I make. I feel like I can make anything I need when the need arises. And the need arises. So I made this quick. But I think that's the way to go with that seal setting all the way back in there the way it does. So we'll get these drove in. You can kind of feel and even hear a little difference when these bottom out. As you can see, that drove in there pretty nice. It sits back in there quite a ways. But I don't know if I'd have got that good results trying to tap that in there with a hammer. Plus it'd have been hard to hold it and tap around there at the same time. So if you don't have the means to make a seal driver, I would highly suggest buying a set. You can buy a kit that's got a variety of sizes in it. But you need to have something here to do this one. Get the other side done, put the differential in. Biggest thing is making sure you start out square. Perfect. It's been a few days since I cleaned this up with the wire brush, and when I got done with that I took it outside and power washed it because this thing had been sitting outside in the open for quite a while. So the axle tubes were full of gunk and grease and that old 90 weight. So I just took a power wash to it really good from both ends, and it's really good shape. Brought it in here and got it dried off good, and I'm really amazed that it's not covered with flash rust because it's been over a week since I did that. I have a dehumidifier in here, but I didn't think that would be enough to do it, but it did. So I think we'll turn it up this way, get the gasket on, set it in there. These housings are actually it's just a sheet metal housing. When there's no guts in them, they're really lightweight. This gasket should only go one way. That's not it. That is it. I think I'm going to put a little gasket sealer on there. I don't know if I'm going to trust that gasket alone to seal this up. Really don't want 90 weight leaking out of a freshly rebuilt rear end. I've come to rely on this copper spray gasket stuff. It's a lot quicker, less messier than squeezing it out of a tube. The copper really isn't necessary in this instance, but it's not going to hurt nothing either. This is a high temp stuff. It's really nice for exhaust manifold gaskets and things of that nature. But it should work right here too. A lot quicker, less mess. Yeah, that side is the top. This thing is quite heavy. And that just doubled, maybe even tripled the weight of this rear end. It's on there. 3/8 fine threaded nuts all the way around, 10 of them I think there are. I'll get them on there off camera and get it torqued down. Not going to bother filming that. I think everybody's got the righty-tighty, lefty-loosey thing down by now. Done. Days like this make me wonder why I bought the smallest air conditioner I could get for this place. I wanted it mainly to keep the humidity out of here, but when you got a 123-degree heat index, a little extra would help. Pumpkin's in. Ran all the nuts down with this. No impacts got their place. And I always use an impact taking stuff apart, but going together I like to use these whenever possible. So if something goes wrong, like a thread binds up, you can feel it. So I got them all done, did the old crisscross thing all the way around, and I torqued it. Got on the old Google machine, 3/8 24 nut, which is fine thread, which is what these are. They call out 26 foot-pounds of torque on Google. And my torque wrench goes as low as 30, so 30 it is. So that's done. Now I'm going to start putting this rust encapsulator paint on, which this just goes on with a brush. And I'm not sure if I got enough to do the whole thing. And as I stated before, this says it's gloss black, and if it's really shiny, I'm going to go over it with a satin black. Got this all painted up. Got the masking off. This kit comes with these new T-bolts that replace the originals. The originals pressed in, but these do not. They just slide in there. This T-shaped head keeps them from spinning. And only 4 of them get used for this brake kit. This bottom one is not used, but it gives you enough. I don't know if it's for a different kit or what. This new caliper mounting bracket, an e-brake part, goes on with the caliper towards the rear of the vehicle. Go ahead and get them stuck in there. And then I can slide the axle in and get that bolted up. Okay, before the axles can go in, there's an O-ring and a retainer ring on this green bearing. And this retainer plate that comes with it has to come off, and it has to be replaced with this. And then there's a spacer goes on this side. I'm just going to set them aside for now. But I need to get this O-ring off and this retaining clip off. It's like a spiral lock type clip. That's got to come out so this can come off. That just gets worked up out of the groove around there. Not real hard to do, but just gotta be careful with it so you don't bend it. Now that factory plate can come off. This has a lip on one side, so that goes up. Basically push the axle a little bit further into the housing. And then it's just a matter of repeating the process. Got this new retainer plate in, spiral lock back on, and the spacer ring goes on. That will sit up against the spiral lock. That basically controls the depth of your bearing in the housing. O-ring on. That one's ready to go. Back again over here at the bench. I've been mocking this up with the plan that I'd come in here at the end with this quick slick assembly video, making things look everything great and peachy. But here's the deal. I got the other side mocked up, and these new axles I bought have screw-in studs. And there's a lock washer on there, and that lock washer is just enough that when the axle comes around, each stud hits on the cam or whatever you want to call it for the emergency brake, and it also rubs on the spring for the emergency brake shoes. So I have to take every one of these studs out of the axle, get rid of the lock nut or lock washer. You know, slide the axle in. Careful not to rip up that new seal in there. Okay, the splines are started. Now this retaining ring's got to be turned so the bolts line up too. So I get that in place. There's very little room in there for your fingers, but you can get it. And it's just a matter of turning the axle so you got that hole that lines up with the studs. Getting everything clamped together. Now that these are all started, I'll go ahead and get them torqued down, and I'll bring you back for the next step, which will be putting the brake rotors on. You know, if that axle's in there and torqued down, you kind of see what I'm talking about here. A shiny piece. I don't know how well that's showing up on camera. A shiny piece right here, and there's a spring that holds these emergency brake shoes on. You can see that about a 1/16 of an inch clearance is all I've got. And that's with the lock washers out on the wheel studs. But everything clears now, so I can move on to getting the rotors put on, calipers, getting this thing wrapped up. That's plenty good for now. Now to get these rotors on, there's a left and right to these as well. What determines that's your brake bleeding screw. You want that towards the top. So when you go to bleed the brakes, naturally all the air is going to rise out of the top. The pads come pre-installed. A little piece of foam there holding it together. And we'll slide these floating caliper pins back. And then there's a notch on the top of the brake pads, so you kind of got to turn it in there to get them in. Basically just hook them on. That adjustment slider back, that one back. And these bolt on, they can be torqued down. It's just that easy on this part. This kit comes with shorter bolts. I don't know why these factory bolts, must be for the factory type lines, are too long. But anyway, I get different bolts, but they're a banjo type bolt, which if you don't know what that is, it's got two copper crush washers. There's a hole right there, and then the bolt's hollow, so the brake fluid will come in through the side, out the end of the bolt, and that's what pressurizes the caliper. So I'll go ahead and swap out this long bolt for the shorter one. Looks like there's about a 1/4 inch or so difference. It's not much, but I don't want to bottom that out and hurt anything. So just put a copper washer on each side of your line fitting. All there is to that. Put it through the right way. And then you tighten that down and it'll be done. You want to be careful with these since they're hollow. You don't want to over torque them because you'll break them. Basically, you just want enough to crush that washer and get a good seal on there. Okay, off camera. This kit came with these two brackets to clip the flexible brake lines in. So I welded them on. They can be screwed on. Drill and tap the axle housing and screw them on, but I didn't want to get filings inside the axle tube, so I just welded them on, painted it back up quick. Then these clips hold them on. And that should give me plenty of room for the U-bolts around the axle. So I get both sides of these done, then I can start working on getting the hard lines hooked up. I had bought these pre-bent lines that'll go from the distribution block. Comes down, goes over, but it's designed for drum brakes, so it went to the original cylinder in the drum brake. So I'm just going to have to cut and reflare these so it fits up there. Looks like I'm going to have to tweak the bend on it a little bit too. I'll just put that on finger tight for now. Grab a marker and I'll cut this line off. I'm not sure how much reflaring that's going to take up, so it's kind of a game of guessing by golly here. But I should be able to fudge it a little bit back here in these bends to make it work. Okay, I got my tube cut to length. Nut on, now I'm ready to flare this thing. Give that just a little lube. For these brake lines, we'll be doing a 45-degree double flare. So I want to make sure I get the dies set perfectly for that. These brake flaring tools are pretty self-explanatory. Set it to operation 0, and that sets the end of your tube flush in the dies. and your die is flush back against the stop. Then all I do is clamp it down. And then this is for several different size tubes. So for the first flare, I want it on operation 1 for 3/16 tubing. That bubbles it out. And then operation 2 gives it the double flare. That should be it. Nice flare ready to go on. E-brake's pretty straightforward. Just slide this one nut off here. This end of the cable just got a loop in it that hooks on that bracket. And I can slide it into the caliper bracket. That's it. I'll tighten these nuts down. That's all there is to it on both sides. This wraps it up. One complete, refreshed, 8 3/4 rear end. The new limited slip differential in it, or sure grip for you Mopar guys. New disc brake setup, new axles, new bearings throughout, new brake lines throughout. I've already filled it with oil, just standard 90 weight with an additive for limited slip differentials. I didn't think you needed to see that on camera. Plus anybody that's done it knows how it's not much fun. So anyway, it's done. This open end of the brake line, I put a piece of duct tape over for the time being to keep dirt out and keep that little clip from getting lost, or it'll eventually go up to the steel hard line on the car body itself. And I might zip tie these back for now. And then this can get set aside until it's ready to go in the car. Stay tuned, it would be much appreciated. Catch y'all next time.